The sun rose lazily over the Iowa fields, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. I'd been up for hours already, the smell of wet earth and morning dew permeating my clothes. My overalls, a second uniform, were caked with mud and straw, as usual. It was the life I knew, the life my father taught me, and one I loved deeply. The farm was more than a business. It was my legacy, my purpose. But for Sarah, my daughter, it was just a source of shame. She was in high school, and with each passing year the distance between us grew. I saw the disdain in her eyes when I came home, exhausted and covered in grime. "Dad, can't you just shower before you pick me up from school?" she'd asked once, her voice laced with exasperation. I laughed, a tired laugh. "It's the smell of hard work, honey. It's the smell of providing for our family." But she didn't understand. She dreamed of a life in the big city, far from the dust and the cattle, far from what she considered a dull existence. I tried to connect with her, talked about the harvests, the new calves, the challenges we faced with the weather. She'd just nod, her eyes fixed on her phone, or respond with monosyllables. The farm, which for me was a sanctuary, for her was a prison. I watched her pull away, and every step she took further from this world I loved so much hurt more than any physical pain farm work could inflict. I knew she was ashamed of me, of my work, of my muddy overalls, and I didn't know how to change it. If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to catch the next chapters. The tension in our small farmhouse was thick enough to cut with a knife. Breakfasts were silent affairs, punctuated only by the clinking of silverware. Sarah would rush through her cereal, her gaze never meeting mine, and then disappear to her room. My wife Martha would try to bridge the gap, suggesting family movie nights or weekend trips, but Sarah always had an excuse. Friends to see, homework to do, anything to avoid spending time with her mud-caked father. I understood in a way. Growing up in a small rural town, appearances mattered to teenagers. My rough hands and perpetually stained clothes were probably an embarrassment to her social life. I tried to clean up more, to change out of my overalls as soon as I came in from the fields, but the farm was a constant, demanding presence, and sometimes there simply wasn't enough time. The cows needed milking, the crops needed tending, and my own needs often came last. One evening, I found Sarah in the barn, something she hadn't done willingly in years. My heart leaped with a flicker of hope. Maybe she was finally showing some interest in the farm, but as I got closer, I saw the distress in her eyes. A small kitten, one of the barn cats, had gotten its paw caught in some baling twine. Sarah was trying to free it, her brow furrowed in concentration, but the twine was too tight. Without a word, I knelt beside her. My calloused fingers, usually clumsy with anything delicate, worked gently at the knot. Sarah watched me, her initial apprehension replaced by a quiet focus. In that moment, the divide between us seemed to lessen, replaced by a shared concern for the tiny creature. When the paw was finally free, the kitten scampered off, and a small, almost imperceptible smile touched Sarah's lips. It was a small victory, but it felt significant. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a way to connect with my daughter beyond the muddy overalls. That small moment in the barn, a fleeting truce in our silent war, gave me a sliver of hope. I started finding small tasks for Sarah around the farm, nothing too dirty, just little things to keep her engaged. "Could you help me feed the chickens, honey?" Or, "The garden needs weeding, maybe you could give me a hand." Most times she'd decline, citing schoolwork or plans with friends, but sometimes surprisingly she'd agree. Those were the days I felt a lightness in my chest, a faint possibility that she might yet find a place in this life, or at least in my life, that didn't involve disdain. Martha encouraged me. "Give her time, John. She's just trying to find her own way." I knew Martha was right, but it was hard. I saw other fathers whose children eagerly helped on their farms, or at least respected the work they did. Why was it so different with Sarah? Was I doing something wrong? Was I too pushy or not pushy enough? The weight of providing for her, of trying to build a future she'd appreciate, pressed down on me. One particularly sweltering summer afternoon, I came in from the fields, my clothes soaked with sweat and clinging to my body. The air conditioning in the house felt like a blessing. Sarah was in the living room meticulously polishing her new laptop, a gift from her grandparents. She glanced up as I entered, and I saw the familiar flicker of disgust in her eyes before she quickly averted her gaze. "Dad, you're dripping sweat all over the floor," she mumbled, her voice flat. My heart sank. That small victory in the barn felt a million miles away. The gap was still there, vast and intimidating despite my efforts. It felt like no matter what I did, my muddy overalls would always be a barrier between us. The summer was drawing to a close, and with it the harvest season was in full swing. It had been a challenging year for the crops, with unpredictable weather patterns. Every day was a race against time, trying to get the corn and soybeans in before the next storm hit. I was pushing myself, working longer hours than ever, trying to ensure a good yield that would secure our family's finances for the coming year. Sarah was back in school, and our interactions were even more minimal. She was busy with extracurriculars and friends, and I was consumed by the farm. One late afternoon, the sky turned an ominous shade of green. The air grew heavy, pregnant with the promise of a severe thunderstorm. I was out in the back 40, trying to finish harvesting a section of corn before the rain arrived. The wind picked up, whipping through the stalks, and I could feel the first drops of rain beginning to fall. I knew I needed to get the combine back to the barn. As I was turning the machinery, my phone tucked in my shirt pocket vibrated insistently. It was Martha. Her voice was frantic, almost incoherent, swallowed by the rising wind. "John, it's Sarah. She collapsed at school. They're taking her to the hospital." My blood ran cold. The combine, the crops, the storm, all of it faded into insignificance. My daughter, my Sarah, in trouble. I fumbled to turn off the engine, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The rain began to lash down, blurring my vision. All I could think of was getting to her. The drive to the regional hospital felt like an eternity, every mile stretching out endlessly, filled with a terrifying uncertainty. This is a critical moment in the story. Please consider subscribing to the channel to find out what happens next, and support us in bringing more emotional stories to life. The hospital waiting room was a sterile, unforgiving place, a stark contrast to the warmth and chaos of our farmhouse. Martha was pacing, her face pale and streaked with tears. I rushed to her, my muddy overalls still on, my heart pounding in my chest. "What happened? Is she okay?" I managed to choke out. Martha could only shake her head, clutching a crumpled tissue. "They don't know, John. She just collapsed during gym class. They're doing tests." Hours blurred into an agonizing eternity. Doctors and nurses moved with a detached efficiency that felt inhuman. Each time a door opened, my head snapped up, hoping for news, any news. The smell of antiseptic filled the air, replacing the familiar scent of earth and hay. My clothes, usually a source of comfort, now felt heavy and out of place in this pristine environment. I saw people glance at my muddy boots, my stained shirt, but I didn't care. My only concern was Sarah. Finally, a young doctor with kind eyes approached us. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller? We have some information about Sarah." My stomach clenched. He explained in calm, measured tones that Sarah had a rare, aggressive form of appendicitis that had ruptured, causing a severe infection. She needed immediate surgery, followed by a long recovery. The words hit me like a physical blow. Surgery, infection, long recovery. The medical terms swirled around me, incomprehensible. All I heard was severe and immediate. The doctor then began to talk about the extensive treatment plan and the associated costs, but the numbers were just a blur. My mind was fixed on one thing: my daughter's life. The hospital room where Sarah lay after her surgery was quiet, save for the rhythmic beeping of the machines monitoring her. She was pale, tubes running from her arm, a stark contrast to the vibrant, energetic girl I knew. My heart ached seeing her so vulnerable. The doctor had been clear. While the surgery was successful, the infection was serious, and her recovery would be lengthy and require specialized care. The associated costs, when they were finally detailed, were staggering, tens of thousands of dollars. The numbers swam before my eyes on the hospital's estimated bill. Our family insurance, while decent, wouldn't cover everything, especially the specialized therapies and extended stay that Sarah would need. My mind raced, frantically trying to piece together how we could possibly afford it. We had some savings, but nowhere near enough for this. The farm was our livelihood, but it operated on tight margins. A bad harvest or an unexpected expense could cripple us. This was an unforeseen catastrophe. Martha sat by Sarah's bedside, holding her hand, tears silently tracing paths down her cheeks. I walked to the window, looking out at the city lights, so different from the wide, dark expanse of our farm. The weight of it all pressed down on me. The fear for Sarah's health, the overwhelming financial burden. How could I have ever imagined that my dirty overalls, symbols of my work, would now feel so inadequate against the clean, cold reality of medical bills? I had worked my entire life to provide for my family, but this was a challenge unlike any I had ever faced. The farm, our legacy, our home, suddenly felt like our only hope, if only I could figure out how. Days bled into weeks. Sarah remained in the hospital, slowly recovering, but the bills kept piling up. I spent my days torn between the farm and Sarah's bedside. Martha was a pillar of strength, but I could see the worry etched on her face too. I started looking into loans, talking to the bank, but the prospects were grim. The collateral required was substantial, and the interest rates for such a large sum were daunting. It felt like we were drowning, slowly but surely. One afternoon, sitting beside Sarah's bed watching her sleep, a thought sparked in my mind. The farm, not just the crops or the livestock, but the land itself. My father, a shrewd man, had always emphasized owning our land outright, carefully managing our resources. He had slowly expanded the acreage over the decades, making sure to pay off loans quickly. I suddenly remembered an old conversation with him about its true value, beyond just its agricultural output. I called our local agricultural bank, a place where I'd always felt at home, where they understood the rhythms of farm life. I spoke with Mr. Henderson, a man who had known our family for generations. I explained our desperate situation, the mounting medical bills, the dire need for funds. He listened patiently, then surprised me. "John," he said, "your father was a smart man. This farm, the land you own, has appreciated significantly over the years. With the current market value, you have considerable equity." He began to explain options I hadn't even considered: an agricultural equity loan, a significant line of credit against the land itself, specifically designed for farmers in emergency situations. The farm, the very place Sarah had disdained, held a hidden strength, a potential I hadn't fully grasped until now. This unexpected turn in the story highlights the importance of what we value. If you're invested in Sarah's journey, remember to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any part of her recovery. The meeting with Mr. Henderson at the bank was a turning point. He laid out the figures, explaining how the farm's value, built over generations of hard work and careful management, could cover Sarah's entire treatment. It wasn't charity, it was our own asset, painstakingly cultivated, coming to our rescue in our darkest hour. The relief that washed over me was immense, so potent it almost brought me to my knees. The suffocating weight of the bills, the constant knot of anxiety in my stomach, began to loosen its grip. I went back to the hospital, my steps lighter than they had been in weeks. Martha was still by Sarah's side, reading to her from a book. When I told her the news, her eyes welled up with tears, not of sorrow, but of profound relief. She hugged me tight, burying her face in my shoulder. "The farm saved her, John," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Your farm." Later, when Sarah was more awake and lucid, we explained it to her. How the farm, our family land, the very thing she found so mundane and embarrassing, was providing every penny for her recovery. She listened quietly, her eyes wide. I saw a flicker of something new in them, not disdain, not boredom, but a flicker of understanding, perhaps even awe. The sterile hospital room, usually so foreign to the life of a farmer, was now a testament to the quiet power of the land and the legacy it represented. It wasn't about the muddy overalls anymore. It was about what they represented: hard work, resilience, and an unexpected safety net. Sarah's recovery was slow but steady. a testament to her resilience. Each day brought small improvements, a bit more color to her cheeks, a little more strength in her steps. As she regained her physical health, something else remarkable began to happen. Her perspective seemed to shift. The walls she'd built between herself and the farm, and by extension between herself and me, slowly started to crumble. She began asking questions about the farm, not just polite acknowledgements to end a conversation, but genuine, curious inquiries. "How are the new calves doing, Dad? Are they still as clumsy as puppies?" she'd ask, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Did you get all the corn harvested before the last rain? I saw the forecast looked pretty bad for a while there." Sometimes when I visited her in the hospital, amidst the beeping machines and sterile white walls, she'd ask me to tell her about my day in the fields, about the challenges of a tricky tractor repair, or the small victories of a good yield from a difficult patch. It was a different kind of conversation, one we hadn't had in years, filling the quiet hospital room with the comforting sounds of farm life. When she was finally well enough to come home, the farm wasn't just a place of recovery for her physical body. It felt like a place of profound healing for all of us. The air, heavy with the scent of fresh-cut hay and damp earth, was a welcome relief from the antiseptic smell of the hospital. Her first day back, she walked slowly around the barn, her hand gently tracing the rough-weathered wood, feeling the history embedded in its beams. She watched me feed the chickens, observed the cows grazing peacefully in the pasture. There was no hurried glance, no averted gaze. Her eyes lingered, taking it all in. I even saw her pick up a small, freshly laid egg, its warmth a stark contrast to the cold hospital instruments, her expression thoughtful, almost reverent. It was as if she was seeing the farm, and everything it represented for the very first time. One crisp afternoon, I was out in the back pasture, fixing a fence post that had splintered during a recent storm, my hands covered in mud and tiny splinters from the rough wood. I heard footsteps behind me and turned to see Sarah. She wasn't wearing her usual pristine clothes. Instead, she had on an old pair of faded jeans and a t-shirt, clearly borrowed from Martha. She stood there for a moment, just watching me work, her gaze steady. Then, unexpectedly, she said, "Dad, can I help? My hands aren't as strong as yours yet, and I'm still a bit wobbly, but maybe I can hold something for you, or hand you tools." My heart swelled in my chest, a warmth spreading through me that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. It wasn't about the task itself, or the help she could physically provide. It was about the willingness, the desire to connect, to bridge the chasm that had separated us for so long. My overalls were still muddy, my hands still rough and calloused, but the shame was finally gone from her eyes. In its place was something akin to respect, a quiet, powerful acknowledgement of the life that had, in such an unexpected and profound way, given her back hers. The seasons turned again, moving from the warmth of summer into the vibrant colors of autumn, and Sarah made a full, remarkable recovery. Life on the farm returned to its familiar rhythm, cows lowing, tractors humming in the distance, but something fundamental had irrevocably changed. Sarah, once so determined to escape this rural existence, now saw the farm not as a burden, a dusty old-fashioned place holding her back, but as a silent, powerful guardian, a foundation that had caught her when she fell. She didn't suddenly decide to trade her city dreams for a life of farming, and I never expected her to. Her aspirations for a future beyond the fields were still there, bright and clear, but they were now tempered with a profound appreciation for the roots that sustained her. She occasionally helped with chores, not out of obligation or because Martha asked her to, but out of a genuine desire to contribute. Sometimes, when I'd come in from the fields, covered in mud and sweat from a long day, she'd even greet me with a small, genuine smile, no hint of the old disgust or impatience. "Rough day, Dad?" she'd ask. And for the first time in years, it felt like she truly saw me, not just the dirt on my clothes or the grease on my hands, but the effort, the dedication, the love I poured into this land. One crisp autumn evening, as the air grew cool and carried the earthy scent of drying leaves and harvested fields, we were sitting together on the old porch swing. The last rays of sun were disappearing behind the distant silos, painting the sky in soft purples and oranges. "Dad," she said softly, breaking the comfortable silence, her voice barely a whisper, Thank you for everything, for the farm. I never really understood its value or your work until now." I looked at her, my beautiful, strong daughter, silhouetted against the fading light, and a powerful wave of emotion washed over me. It wasn't just the money the farm had provided, the immense financial burden it had lifted. It was the life it had meticulously built, the quiet strength it embodied, the hard-earned lessons it had taught, and the unexpected, profound way it had brought us back together. My muddy overalls were still a constant in my life, a symbol of my unending dedication to the land. But now, they carried a profoundly different meaning for Sarah. They were no longer a source of embarrassment or a barrier between us, but a quiet, powerful testament to the enduring strength of family, the deep, unwavering roots of home, and the silent, unwavering power of the land that had, quite literally, paid every cent of her hospital treatment. It was, without a doubt, the most important harvest the farm had ever yielded, far more valuable than any crop of corn or soybeans. If you connected with John and Sarah's story, please hit that subscribe button to join our community and never miss another heartwarming tale. Thank you for watching.